Hello Cancer, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for August for the Sun or the Ascendant. As ever, I'm going to give you the key strands to look out for. Please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in forensic detail all the key dates and influences particularly appropriate for your sign. Now, as you begin this month, so the Sun and also Mercury are in house 2 for you. So that does suggest that you are going to be thinking about the foundations in your world. Enjoying good food, enjoying gatherings together with other people where you can share those things. Those can also be part of what you hope to do. But you're going to have some potential financial news of a very positive nature when on the 11th Venus makes its way into Leo. But of course we all know the cost of living crisis is affecting us all. And I think you are going to become more conscious of how you can manage the resources you have this month, but also you may have to also become a bit more aware of some of the constraints. However, there is at the heart of this month an absolutely magical link between Venus and Jupiter, which can be very lucky for you. And that's from the 16th to the 20th. So I can't wait to tell you about that. And also on the 20th, the feisty energies of Mars arrives in your 12th house, where he's going to be for 8 months. This is very rare. Mars usually takes 6 weeks to work through each zodiac sign, but due to a retrograde which begins on the 30th of October, it's going to be in your 12th house, which is a very sensitive placement for Mars, through to the 25th of March 2023. So I'm going to tell you about that. And of course I'll tell you about the full moon on the 12th and the new moon, which occurs in a very bubbly part of your scope on the 27th. Now, if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast and understand the impact that more serious astrology can have in helping you to manage your life better, if you give me 3 pieces of birth data of time, date and place, I can give you a roadmap that can guide you for the rest of your life. And also my special package, you can get a 12-month forecast. These are based on your unique data, so totally individual to you. And you can get 30% off by seeing the link beneath this video. Now I've just crashed through the 100,000 subscribers mark on YouTube. I'd be honoured if you can help to get me to 101,000 as quickly as possible. So if you've yet to subscribe, please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you have already, thank you so much for being with me. Now, please stay with me for your in-depth Cancer guide. So Cancer, as you make your way into August, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, this can be a time when the weather's better, hopefully, and it gives us an opportunity to have some gatherings. And of course Leo, where the Sun and Mercury are at the start of this month, is a very sociable sign. But for you, this is house 2, as I mentioned before, the foundations of your world, and also it's potentially about how you feel about yourself in terms of your self-worth, but it can just in a very prosaic way be about money. So those are going to be things that I think you're going to be thinking a lot about this month. But from the 3rd through to the 12th, Mars, which is high in the sky, in a very idealistic part of your situation at the start of this month, the 11th house, that's a very sociable location as well. And of course you've got Uranus and the North Node there as well. But that 11th house is also about your future planning. And Mars is in a rather aggravating square with Saturn through from the 3rd to the 12th. So it may mean that something that you hope to achieve that would really sort of give you a lift in terms of your spiritual dimension, it could in some ways have some kind of limitation applied to it that is to do with longer term finances, unfortunately. If you are thinking or have been thinking of going into business with a friend, I think this is a bit of a cautionary aspect, and one that tells you perhaps to keep business and pleasure apart. However, on the 4th, Mercury moves out of the sign of Leo and into the sign of Virgo, which it rules. And for you, this is house 3. This can see a quickening up. And this is going to become much more obvious to you on the 23rd, when the Sun plays catch up with Mercury. And generally things will speed up for you. But I think Mercury is about how we think. So if you are someone who wants to express your ideas, or you need to talk to people or gain greater information in terms of guiding your progress, then Mercury can be of great help to you moving into the precise sign of Virgo on the 4th. But all this month, there is a clash between Saturn and Uranus. If this rings something of a celestial bell, it's because 3 times last year, these two planets came into an exact square, and at the start of this year they were also at right angles as well. Now, inside of 3 degrees, they're pretty well in this square through till December this year. So a long old time. What's the implications for you? Well, Uranus, as I mentioned before, along with Mars in the North Node, is in the part of your horoscope to do with the collective. How you pick up information from others, how you connect to others, can be to do with friendships or group activities, or those longer term plans. But Uranus is a very restless influence, and of course it's very much about trying to find the truth. Whereas Saturn, its co-ruler of Aquarius, in the sign of Aquarius, has now got the handbrake on in a retrograde. So I think it's possible that there could be a degree of frustration if your hopes to go forwards about something that you feel would be more liberating for you are in some ways held up. Now, they could be held up by just rules and regulations, red tape, just processes seeming to slow down. So future hopes may be very dependent on the financial side of things this month, which seems quite obvious with the cost of living increases that we're all encountering. But I think for you it's deeper than that. It's almost how you connect at a much more devoted level, and you could be checking out your values. Remember, the second house, very much about how you view your self-worth. You could be checking your values, how they connect to other people that you know. So I think there could be some challenges around friendships, or changes of plan around your long-term hopes. But on the 11th of this month, Venus does move into the sign of Leo, replacing Mercury. And although Venus is going to be going into an opposition with Saturn in the last week of this month, this initially could bring some money in, or help you to view a situation in a more hopeful way. Venus moving into the second house is a pretty regular trigger of some kind of improvement. The trick, of course, with Venus is that we don't then splash out what we have too quickly. We don't let it go through our fingers too fast. But on the 12th, the full moon is in the sign of Aquarius. So once more, where Saturn is, for you, house 8. The Sun in house 2, those everyday monies, your self-worth, your foundations. The 8th house, very much more about what you share with others, and perhaps also longer term finance, like pensions, investments, savings, these kind of things. But this is a full moon that does square up with Uranus. So the unpredictability of Uranus can have an effect on your situation. But also, we must remember that Uranus can spring positive surprises as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a cost. It can be some kind of upside that could be triggered by this full moon. But you're certainly, I think, going to be thinking a lot about what's valuable to you and trying to fit that together in how you see your life going forwards working. Now, it could mean that could see some Cancerian people deciding to simplify their life in some way, because obviously Saturn very much asks us to do that. and get by on a little bit less around certain things, but create more income around the things that are important to you. So it's vital that you don't feel that you won't have any choices, because I think you will, and Uranus is basically alerting you that the choices may require some change, and change isn't something that all of us necessarily are keen to embrace, particularly if it challenges the status quo or our sense of physical security. But I think for some crabs that's going to be a theme. But then from the 12th to the 17th, the Sun is in an opposition with Saturn, and that's really quite hard going. So if your circumstances are not flowing as you would like, it would be easy to feel a little bit demotivated and feel frustrated by that situation. In a romantic context, you may also become a little bit more aware of the differences between you and a partner. But equally, if you choose to try even harder to work at any kind of a relationship, especially if money is in the equation and there has been some challenges in that area, your ability to work hard can see you almost draw closer together. So again, it's not a binary option between good or bad, it's really how we respond to the influence. And then, as I mentioned before, you have this absolutely fantastic link between Venus in the second house and Jupiter in the 10th house for you. So some really good news can occur to you. It could be around a job, it may be around a property matter, it may be that you can have a stroke of fortune, it may even be that you're going to be attracted to someone who's quite, not necessarily much better off than you, but someone who's got a good sense of their worth, whatever their financial circumstances. But there could be some financial serendipity at the heart of the month. On the 20th, however, as I mentioned before, Mars does move into your 12th house. Any issue from your past, however historical it is, that you feel that you'd dealt with and worked through and released, it could have a tendency to come up again in the next 8 months. Now, the other thing with Mars in the 12th house that we must remember is that it can be a force for good in terms of reminding us of past experiences, knowledge, connections, people that actually could still be useful and relevant to us in our future. But it just may be at the start of the 12th house transit, we're not conscious of that. This 12th house transit, as I said before, is going to be very long lasting. So the best way to work with this is to submit to it. Because Mars is not at its best when it's located in your sign, there could be a tendency with this particular planetary ingress for you to become a little bit more defensive, quite honestly. But there is another opportunity to use the drive of Mars to understand more about what makes you tick at a deeper level. Now, some people will obviously say that Cancerian people can dislike conflict and withdraw from situations rather than actually asserting clearly what their issue is. So I think Mars can actually be very positive in pushing you to ventilate any simmering frustrations or past disappointments, or if you have gone through something traumatic, revisiting it and basically forming a relationship with it once more with the knowledge and experience you have now, where you are in your life now, because you could be surprised how some things could actually be very different once you revisit them. But if you don't revisit some of these things, your moods could be a bit up and down right through till next March. So just letting you know about that. But on the 23rd, the Sun, as I mentioned before, moves into Virgo, joins up with Mercury briefly, because on the 26th, Mercury moves into the sign of Libra. But this move of the Sun into the third house means that suddenly you're much more alert to things. You're not going to be so caught up in the more physical plane. It's more to do with air, it's more to do with communication, and things can start to speed up accordingly. But on the 24th, Uranus goes into a retrograde, which will last through to the 21st of January. And that's why Uranus and Saturn in a retrograde, Uranus now in a retrograde, are repeating the square that occurred earlier this year and 3 times last year. I'll be honest with you, I think the chances of there being a big surge with COVID are really closely linked to this aspect, because Saturn is in the sign of the collective, Aquarius, pardon me, and Uranus, which is very much the truth of situations, is to do with freedoms. Because Saturn can constrain freedoms, I think somewhere or another there's likely to be the imposition of masks or travel controls. Whether we like it or not, I think there is a much greater chance of these things coming into play once more. But then on the 26th, Mercury, as I mentioned just now, goes into Libra, which is brilliant in a way, because that's going to help you to think about home, family and emotional issues. I'll be honest with you, Mercury isn't at its best in the 4th house, but just before it moves, it does forge a very penetrating influence with Pluto. So there could be a big discussion you have from the 20th to the 25th, which gives you a lot more clarity about something that's important to you. Now, I mentioned before that Venus was coming into an opposition with Saturn as the month comes to a close, the last week. If you are thinking about spending on a big ticket item that's more frivolous, and Venus can encourage frivolous spending, what Saturn retrograde is asking Venus to do is to think very carefully about the true value and worth. Also, in a romantic context, if there is somebody that you're very strongly drawn to, but they do have such different values to you, this could be a bit of a pinch point in the relationship and test out whether it will be viable going forwards. But in the last week, once Mercury has moved into Libra, it forges a glittering link with Mars. So that combination of Mercury in the 4th and Mars in the 12th could see a heart-to-heart with someone, quite a passionate heart-to-heart with someone in your world, perhaps someone you haven't spoken to for some while, maybe a family member or someone in your extended family, a close friend, and it can be interesting that. Also on the 27th, we have the new moon in the sign of Virgo. Ordinarily, this would be a big push to think about technology, to think about your relationships with your neighbours or siblings, or your modes of transport, funnily enough, particularly cycling. Now, you may decide that this is a new moon that could give you a lot of encouragement to be more active or to get more fit, but because it squares up with Mars, I think something can come into the open through the early parts of September which may surprise you quite a lot. Someone may articulate an opinion about your approach to situations which you're not necessarily keen on listening, but it may be because of something you've deferred for a very long time rather than actually properly clearing the air. So there could be a big discussion as this month draws to a close and you go into September, which could be a bit unsettling, a bit startling, but actually it can be very good for you if it helps you to understand at a much deeper psychological level something that's been manifesting in your approach or someone else's approach, that maybe there's been some kind of shielding from. I'm not saying that you've been deliberately hiding from something. It's more because of that tendency to avoid having direct conversations, because you can find that a little challenging. But also remember, Cancer, that you are a leader sign. As I'm keen to say, you're not chained to that kitchen sink making apple pie. You have so many qualities, and that leader quality can at times see you a little bit keen on controlling things, especially around the family scene. Now, your abilities of management are fantastic in a professional context, and a lot of people in very senior positions or supervisory roles often are Cancers. But I think Mars being in that tender 12th house, and of course it's the planet of passion, could see a conversation come into the open. The third house is about conversation. A psychologically rooted conversation could see something coming into the open, but accept it, grow with it if that should happen. Because if you have been deferring something, it will have been making its weight felt deep within your being in some way, whether it's through your health, whether it's through energy, whether it's through some of your decision making. And the release of something historical could be very cathartic and positive for you. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Stay safe, take care, and goodbye for now.